Happy Wednesday. I'm working on a Enchantress commission this morning. I'm actually coloring it. This is my rough, what I call a color study. It's just a basic color sketch that helps me determine how to color it. So I use this as just a basic guide. And my goal here during this live stream is to get this thing completed. So thanks for joining. I hope your morning is off to a good start. I appreciate your support and interest in my work. You can find out more about my work at my Patreon page. There's a link at the bottom left corner that takes you to my page, which really is updated every week, every Thursday and Friday. I have new works in progress, process shots, exclusive digital content for Patreon members. I've got a 3-issue miniseries I'm working on currently, and the first 27 pages is available as a kind of a sneak preview reward for Patreon members. So I hope that you'll take a look there. It's free to join, and there are 4 tiers of membership should you choose to kind of up the ante and get access to a bunch of really cool rewards, including a custom sketch, print posters, and I've got archives of art that have not been seen before. It stretches back all the way to the early 1990s. So there's some pretty interesting things there, I think. Also, you can check out my Etsy store. There's a link that pops up. My commission list is open probably until January. So if you would like to commission original comic art, head over there. It's super easy to place an order. So, with all that said, I'm going to get to it. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through my process a little bit. This is my rough color layer here, and I will just use that as a guide. Typically what I'll do is I'll export this as a JPEG, and I'm going to just call it Color Study. And I'm going to open it back up. So now I have it here, and I can select my colors. I already selected. I'm actually going to drag it over here to my other screen. I'll just get rid of all of that. So a lot of times I use a flatter. I have somebody who flats my work, but I really want to get this listed soon, so I'm just gonna do the flats myself. It's pretty easy. flats really are the basic defining areas of the art. So it's very simple, flat collars. All the fun stuff comes after you get these flats added. These don't have to be exact. I will go back and clean these edges up a bit, especially with this hair, just getting the basic shapes defined. So this is Enchantress from Marvel's original Secret Wars miniseries, which was published, I think, in 1983, 1984. And Secret Wars was kind of my gateway into the Marvel Universe. It was one of the first comics, I think, that I really... I mean, I had read comics a little bit when I was very little, but I probably just looked at the pictures more than reading it, and I started reading Savage Sword of Conan. That was, I think, literally one of my first comics that I read. I think when I was 11 or 12, and was hooked on that. And there were these ads. There was an ad for Epic Illustrated, I think, in one of the Conan books. And so I sought that out and found those, and was really intrigued by Epic, because it looked and felt like it wasn't like a normal comic. It just seemed more grown up, right? And it was kind of a very, very similar to Heavy Metal magazine, which was usually bagged up and on the top shelf of the newsstand, out of reach of kids. But Epic was more accessible. So I started reading Epic, and in Epic there was an ad for Marvel Comics, for just the regular comics. And that ad was an illustration of this guy sitting at his office desk, and his window overlooks the city, and he's got a tie on, he's got a suit, but he's reading a Thor comic. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. So maybe comics aren't just for kids, even though I was a kid. When you're a kid, you always want to do things that maybe kids shouldn't, right? There's always that rebellious aspect. But I was really intrigued by that, so I started to pick up some Marvel comics, and that was right around the time that Secret Wars was being published. I think the first issue, I was able to get the first issue right off the spinner rack. Really like that flush tone all that much. So I thought it would be cool to pay a little homage to Secret Wars. Enchantress was not a big character in that series, but she did have, she did have a part to play in it. And I thought, well, I'm going to pick a character to draw that doesn't get a lot of attention. Hey, Matt. Uh, 237. I don't know. I think I started reading Avengers when John Buscema and Tom Palmer were back on the book, and I don't remember the exact issue number. I have them in my collection, but it would have been probably like 1984 ish. But I really was immediately a fan of John Buscema and Tom Palmer. What a great team. And if it was possible, if it was possible to have a crush on a comic book character, I was very much interested in the Wasp when I was a kid. Wow, the way Buscema drew her was amazing. I probably bought Avengers just for the Wasp. Got her hair done. Masters of Evil. I don't even remember what the storyline was exactly. It might have been. I remember one issue that stands out was Hercules and Submariner having a huge fight. And that was really entertaining. Which was cool because you got to really see these personalities. I think Roger Stern may have been writing it. And that also felt different from DC, what they were doing to me. I mean, I've always been kind of a Marvel guy, but I don't know, there just felt like there was a real history there, like with Submariner and Captain America when they would interact. You know, it was really interesting. Literally, World War II veterans. Oh, that's a really bright green. I feel like I need to maybe tone that down just a little. But I liked Secret Wars because it was a really great introduction to all those characters, and Jim Shooter was really good at that. He kind of wrote it in the style of Stan Lee, I think. Just it felt like it could have been a Stan Lee, Jack Kirby project, which would have been pretty amazing. I think I probably should have created the flats in Photoshop. It seems to be a little better than Clip Studio when it comes to flatting. think I'm gonna adjust her eye a little bit. Something I probably should have done when I was inking it. It's just a little too close to the side of her face. Maybe something no one would notice, but I'm just gonna make a little adjustment. Alright. That's the great thing about the digital aspects of creating comic art. You can make some quick minor edits. Know what color. I'm going to just guess her eyes are green. And I'm just going to go with that. Alright, so now I just need to go in and just clean up these edges a little bit. Nothing major. Let's get this logo. This, I'm just gonna manually fill these letters in just because pretty small. I think it's going to be quicker to do that. Funny thing about coloring is I've been coloring comics for many years, but it really wasn't until I started painting, like traditional painting, that I began to appreciate the importance of color and learning, you know, how to apply it. So it's definitely, I learned some important lessons with painting, aside from just helping me understand color and how to work with it, but the realization that, you know, you really need to, as an artist, you really should step outside of the comic medium and, you know, just do other things, and you'll bring knowledge back to the table. That definitely was the case with my painting endeavors. I was just painting for fun. I was just doing it as a, I don't know, something to kind of get me away from the digital ecosystem and just paint. I have not been able to paint for a while because I've got these comic book projects lined up, and I'm hopeful that I'll be able to get out and paint a little bit while the weather is tolerable. Alright, flats are done. I'm going to deal with this energy stuff a little differently, I think. I think for now I'm just going to just start coloring for real. So now that I have my flats created, I can just grab and select an entire area of color. I'll pull this over so it's clear what I'm doing. So I'm basically just going back to my color study and I'm selecting those little pieces applying all the shading. So my coloring style is I have a very loose, it's a painterly kind of approach. I don't get too caught up in nuance. Just seems to fit my style of art better. Up though. I need to do that on a separate layer. So this is my shading layer, I guess you could call it. And I do that just in case I ever need to go back and, you know, change the color of a costume, for instance. Well, I can go back into that flat layer and I can globally change it and then adjust the shading layer accordingly. It's a little bit of a fail-safe. So that's her hair. Simple. Now I'm gonna work on the flesh tones. zoom in here just a little bit. So when I first saw digital coloring, it was at Malibu Comics. This was in 1993, and that was when Photoshop was brand new, and the coloring department at Malibu, they were the coloring department for Image Comics, and that's kind of how that all started at Malibu. And I used to go in there occasionally just to, if I had a note for a colorist or whatnot, and I would watch them work. Of course, I think most of them were artists, but they all knew Photoshop, right? They all had at least the basic understanding of it, and whereas the guys in the art department where I worked, we didn't know Photoshop at all. I would look at it and just be completely dismayed and just like, this looks so complicated. It's amazing what you guys do. And it was, because it was literally a brand new tool. And they were doing really incredible work, and it was fascinating to watch what they did to the line art. And the colorists, we had, I think we had 2 or 3 colorists in the art department, but they were traditional colorists. They would have photocopies of the pages, and they would color them in marker, and they would write notes along the margins of what colors those were. And that's how comics used to be colored. They were colored by hand with those notes, and then you had the color separators, who typically were not artists, and they would just separate those colors into plates, and then it would go to the printer. So Malibu was sort of still doing it traditionally, in that there were 2 divisions. There was the color department, the digital people, and then there was the traditional colorists. And the traditional colorists would bring their pages, their photocopied colored pages, to the coloring department, and then they would take those notes and they would create it in Photoshop. They would basically replicate what was colored in marker on screen. And that's the way it started. And of course, eventually, colorists learned Photoshop, and so it reduced those separate departments became one, because the colorist was doing it all. They were doing what I'm doing. They're defining the colors, they're doing their color study, and then it's all colored digitally. So after Malibu, I was really laser focused on creator-owned projects, and I was trying to learn all of it, and I was learning coloring, and I had help from probably one of the best colorists in the industry, Moose Bauman. Helped me learn he taught me the basics of how to color digitally, and which was a great help. And so that's really where my foundation of knowledge comes from. Moose basically showing me how to set up a page in Photoshop and, you know, the basics of how to do it. And if you Google Moose Bauman, you'll find that he has worked on just about everything, and he is, I think, still considered probably one of the top colorists around. Alright, so we've got the basics here. Now let's deal with the costume. I think I'm going to put just a little bit of blue in that green. Liven it up a little bit. There goes my dog. Being a guard dog. Alright. Let's get these 1960s leggings. Doesn't really have to be anything super detailed. I think I might need to get a new pen nib for my drawing tablet. It seems to be making a lot of noise lately. It's rattling. Now I'm going to have some lighter highlights. It's usually what I add at the end. Work from dark to light. That's seems to be the general rule for painting and coloring. So it looks like my Instagram video is frozen. Not sure why. I was getting some activity coming in from Instagram, but lately I've noticed my live video feed on the Instagram page, it's just frozen. So I'm not sure if that's just on my end or if that's what they are seeing. Alright, I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. headdress. I have that colored, shaded in a little bit. Speaking of coloring, I just picked up Titan Comics Conan, Savage Sword of Conan Reforged. And what they're doing is pretty interesting. They are coloring the old black and white Savage Sword of Conan comics. And which were famously black and white, and that was the format, and it still is. They have their current run of Savage Sword is black and white, which is awesome. I love it. However, they chose to do a colorized version of these early issues. I was a little skeptical. Like, I wasn't sure how they were going to do that and still and not overpower those classic comics. But they knocked it out of the park, because I don't know if it was a conscious effort or if it was like, this is what we're doing, but they look like they were colored in the style like of that time. It's possible that they decided, okay, we're going to do this, but we're going to color as though it's 1974, and that's how we're going to do it. We're not going to modernize color it. And that was what I was concerned about, is that they would try to make it better and put all this glossy, slick coloring into it, and they didn't. They really kept it pretty simple but tastefully done, and I'm just continually impressed with what they're doing at Titan. They published the first issue of Savage Sword, which was a Barry Windsor Smith and John Buscema issue. And it looks great. It really looks nice. I don't buy many new comics these days, but I have been following the Titan Conan line of books, and they are, for the most part, really satisfying. Just put a little bit of a reddish pink hue just to liven up that flesh tone a bit. So now I'm going to figure out, I think I may take this back into Photoshop to do this energy stuff. So I'm going to save it and bring it back in. Let's see if I've got, there we go. All right. So I think what I'm going to do I'm going to turn those black lines. I think I'm going to make those blue. Let's turn on our channels. We're going to make this kind of a very light cyan. There we go. There's probably a way to do this in Clip Studio, but I prefer to use Photoshop for this kind of stuff. Grab this little section. Back here, paste it in. Delete that. This one's going to be a little trickier. I think I'm going to need to zoom in a bit on that one. I gotta put on my drawing glove, because when you don't wear the glove, your hand can sometimes skip over the screen a little, and I need it to be really pretty smooth. Besides, it looks cool. To do this in sections, I think. Okay. These used to be called color holds. I don't know if they still call them that, but before digital, to create this effect where you're basically coloring the actual line art, you would add a vellum sheet overlay to the original art, and you would color those lines that you wanted to be affected. So for instance, if you had the original page, you would have a sheet of vellum and there's an explosion, and you want the explosion to be a different color, the lines, then you would draw that explosion in red, like with a red pen, and then that would go to the color separators, and they would separate those lines and print them a little differently. Whoops, didn't do that right. Alright, so there we have that. I'm going to fill in that energy with red. At least that's my plan. We'll see how that looks. Let's see what this does here. I don't know if I like that. I don't think I do. Kind of just like it as it is. I think that looks pretty nice. Alright, then the last step here is the background. Sure we get all these little pieces. So in my color study, I'll show you that. this is what I had indicated as just sort of a basic gradient behind her. So I think that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do that here in Photoshop, I believe. We'll do like a nice clean gradient. Oh, looks like I missed one little section. Make it a little bit lighter. And then the last thing I want to do is I have these little blue lines that go around the edges of her. I'm going to create that because I think that'll give it a nice contrast and really pop her out of this page. Pick a really bright blue. I might go back into Clip Studio for that, so I'm going to save. Actually, I don't know if I can, because the spot colors, Clip Studio deals with the spot color differently. I'm not sure it's going to mess with that, so I think I'm just going to continue to finish this up here in Photoshop. I kind of like this hard edge to this outline also. It just kind of gives it a more cartoon kind of feel. Still like to retain a kind of a classic style in the coloring whenever I can. that. So then I'm gonna, let's merge this spot channel. Now we've got one layer. I'm gonna go back and save this first. See one area I missed. Merge my spot channels. Now I've got one layer. I'm going to save this as a separate file. I'm going to call this one flat. Actually, I'm going to call it merged, because flat could mean a flat file. I don't want to be creating any confusion for myself later. Then we're going to go back in, close that one out. We'll open that merged file in Clip Studio. All right, so now I can do really what I would call a final pass on the art. And this is just any last little things I may want to do. A little bit of a I'm going to put some blue there in her eyes. Reflection of this light. Oh wait, that's the wrong one. Let's go into Clip Studio. Had it open in Photoshop again. Just want to extend this off the page here so it's a little cleaner. Adds a few little energy effects. The Kirby crackle. I think that's it. So there we have it. There's the Enchantress from Marvel's Secret Wars. I think I'm going to extend this art down here just a little bit first. There's always something. And maybe I'll add just this very slight glow here from her hand. Let's add a little bit of nuance here on the hair. I don't want it to look jagged. Just a little bit more highlight. detail on the hair. All right, we're done. So, look for this. I am going to be listing the original art and the color print over on my eBay store. You can click on it on the bottom left corner of the screen here. You can also look in the show notes, the live stream notes, to find links to Etsy, my Etsy store, where my commission list is open right now until January. Super easy to order a commission through Etsy, and also my Patreon page is free to join. So I hope to see you guys somewhere in these channels. Thank you again for hanging out. I appreciate your support, and I will be back here tomorrow. I generally do the live streams 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern time, so it's just kind of part of my workday. I plug and play, and I'm really glad to see your interest and support. I appreciate it. Have an awesome day. I will be back soon.